Now, after she dies, the father arranges to have this published. He publishes, he says, every single word she wrote, but he makes a lot of comments on it. And the book that's published called Papa, and there's more writing by him than by her in the book. But one of the things she says is that when he was writing Huckleberry Finn, and most of Huckleberry Finn, in fact, after he moved to Hartford, he did a lot of writing in Hartford, but he found it was very difficult to write in Hartford because there was too much entertainment going on. So he did more writing in the summer, and they spent 20 summers in Elmira in a place called Quarry Farm. That's their older sister Susan, over with her husband Theodore Crane. And famously, the sister-in-law built a little study for him that was put on a hill, which has since been moved down to near downtown. It's on the campus of Elmira College. Steve, that would mean he stayed there, and I stayed there. Unfortunately, it's not open to the public. It's only open to twain scholars, and they have lied to them, tell them I'm a scholar, so they got to stay there all weekend. Hey, Mark Twain built a whole career on lying, right? We're like this, the rest of us. Digressing too much.
So back to his life in Hartford.
Okay, in Hartford, he lived in Hartford while they were courting, and he made a lot of trips to Elmira. When they get married, his father-in-law, has already arranged for him to live in Buffalo because he bought him a part interest in a newspaper there. And when he's living in Buffalo, he doesn't really like Buffalo a lot. As a surprise wedding present, Livy knows about this, but Mark did not. He bought them a house, which no longer exists, but it was a mansion and stuff. After the wedding in Elmira, the next morning, they all get on the train. Not just the bride and groom, the father-in-law, the mother-in-law, the sister, the younger brother, the two ministers. There were two ministers, Beecher and Twitchell, performed the ceremony during the wedding. And they all, and some other people, they all go to Buffalo. And there was a guy there who, the Langdon family, owned a coal business in Buffalo, which, by the way, had prices artificially high. At one point, I know there were 7 or 8 newspapers in Buffalo at the time. Some group went around, wanted to put ads in the paper demanding that the prices be lowered, particularly for poor people. And every newspaper except one ran it for free, and it charged for the ad. Okay, it's the coal cartel. There were 2 members of the cartel, the Langdon Coal Company and the Lackawanna, I think it was the Lackawanna Railroad. And Mark Twain, as part owner of the paper, said, we're not going to run this. And he thought it was audacious of people to even ask the thing. Mark Twain, who so often attacked robber barons, his first novel, The Gilded Age, is really an attack on rich people. And that was written entirely here in Hartford with his friend, a neighbor, Charles W. Warren. They were having dinner one time in the Hartford house, and Charles and Mark were talking about how bad contemporary novels are, and wives. They said, oh, you guys can do so better, go ahead and write a better novel. So they took up the challenge, and they agreed to write it. They were supposed to alternate chapters originally, but it ends up, I think Mark Twain wrote about 80% of it. Okay? It's a book, I should say. It's not a terrible book, but it would not be in print today if Mark Twain had not written it. Okay? Everything by Mark Twain remains in print. That the house, as it's being designed, I should say, Livy and Mark both take an interest in designing, but particularly Livy. And Livy's very much influenced by this term that Steve used, picturesque. Picturesque is an architectural and decorating term. And what it refers to is to make things picturesque like nature is. And in nature, you don't have uniform. This room is not picturesque. See, nature doesn't build parallel walls. Nature doesn't have straight lines. Okay? So if you, when I was staying at Quarry Farm in the same, I don't know if you stayed in the same bedroom that they stuff in, that's usually the way to get.
Possibly.
Okay. You know, there are some parallel walls, but you know, you get angles here and there, and there's no symmetry. It's just, kind of an awkwardness to it, but it's kind of interesting to look at. And if you, next time you go through the Mark Twain house, notice that, how many walls are kind of angled one way, ceilings often are. You can't do it completely because you want the house to stand up, okay? And an advantage of straight lines and also anything pyramid, it has a rigidity to it that keeps it from falling down. But the general idea in the picturesque architecture or picturesque decoration is to make things irregular. Be like nature. Nature is good. Man design is bad.
So you think that was her influence?
Yeah, I think, yeah, it was very much. She, the name of the architect is stationed right now, but she met several times with her. Yeah. And Mark Twain, his influence more was, give me a room that's away so I can play pool and write. And smoke, and my wife won't yell at me. Because, well, he smoked all the time, even around her. She sometimes, that something. And he did a lot of drinking. He was probably not an alcoholic. But, you know, a lot of American writers, Hemingway, Tennessee Williams, Richard Yates, who I mentioned before, was serious alcoholics. Mark Twain did drink a lot. He was a fan, particularly of Scotch, and in hot days, he liked beer. So he actually drank a lot of beer and a Myra and a lot of Scotch at Hartford. He was not much of a wine drinker. So, see, instead of wine, you should have,
Beer.
Scotch and beer.
Next time we will. So,
Going back to her influence on his writing, because I think that interests people. I mean, there was a famous debate in the 1930s, I believe, between two Mark Twain scholars. One said she had completely tamed him. He would have been a much greater writer if she hadn't been there. And the other conservative influences in Hartford that tried to set him straight, this wild Westerner who came to their town. And then others, another scholar then turned around and attacked this and said this was not true at all, that she in fact had not a lot of effect on his writing. He always described her as his editor. And as Susie describes in that wonderful autobiography, sessions in the library here where he would read Huckleberry Finn, and the girls would hear these wonderful incidents, and they'd be holding their breath that Mama, I think they might have used that second syllable, Mama, rather than Papa, that Mama would not, as Susie said, expurgate those good stories. And then once in a while she would. Now you went through the entire manuscript of Huckleberry Finn, correct?
Yeah.
Looking for any signs that she had scribbled something,
Yeah.
or that she had done any of the things that Susie described.
Yeah.
And tell us what you found.
The original manuscript of Huckleberry Finn has ended up in the public library in downtown Buffalo, New York. When Mark Twain was there, living in Buffalo, became friendly with the director of the library, and as a gift, years later, he sent him the original manuscript of it. Now, as you can imagine, if you go to the public library in Buffalo, while there's a room called the Mark Twain room, and there's a table with glass on it, and among other, you will see original pages there. They will not let you touch them. But they do have a digital copy, and you can go there and you can go through. And each piece of paper is probably about the size of this book, and I believe it's something like 1,800 of them. So you go through page by page. Now what Susie says in her biography of her father is that when he was reading this, Mama would tell him to change this, change that, and that he changed them. Mark Twain writes, that's not true. He said sometimes he would deliberately put things in that Livy, he knew, would object to. So he would say, you have to take that out, and he would pretend he was going along. Okay? But Michelle and I went to Buffalo, and this was not a lot of fun. But page by page, again, neither was a handwriting expert. There wasn't really all that much writing, other than Mark Twain's handwriting, it's all handwritten. And we were looking for particularly marginalia, or in between, intertextual stuff, in line. There was very little of it. What we saw seemed to be Mark Twain's